The phone rings and your hand moves before your brain catches up. Because that's what you've trained to do for 3 years. Now you've answered thousands of calls, hang-ups, wrong numbers, people asking for the police because they're neighbors. Music is too loud, but this one feels different. The moment you say 911. What's your emergency? The voice on the other end is calm. At first a woman says there's smoke. She says she smells smoke in the hallway. You ask for her address. She gives it, and you type it into the system. And that's when the second line lights up, and then the third, and then the fourth. And suddenly every single line is blinking. Red, 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 and your ears are filled with voices, screaming, crying, coughing, all at once, and you can't tell where one ends and the next begins. You press the headset harder against your ear, and you try to focus on the first caller, but she's gone. The line is dead, and now the screen in front of you is lighting up with alerts. From every direction there's a building on fire downtown. But the reports say it's more than a fire. They say it's collapsing. They say people are running. They say there's a sound like thunder that won't stop, and you don't have time to process because a new call comes through, and it's a man. This time his voice is shaking. He says he's on the 12th floor. He says the stairs are gone. He says there's a woman next to him who can't breathe, and you tell him to stay calm. You tell him help is coming, but you don't know if that's true, because every unit in the city is already en route, and you can hear the sirens in the background of his call, blending with the sirens outside your own window. You ask his name, and he says Marcus, and you hold on to that name like it's the only thing real in the world. Right now you say, Marcus, I need you to find something wet, a towel, a shirt, anything, and put it over your face, and you hear him moving, you hear him coughing. And then you hear a child crying in the background, and your stomach drops, because he didn't mention a child. And you ask him who else is with him, and he says his daughter. She's 6, and she's scared, and she keeps asking when the firefighters are coming, and you don't know what to say because you don't have an answer. You want to tell her that everything will be okay, but you've been doing this long enough to know that sometimes everything is not okay, and you can't lie to her, even through her father's voice. So you say, Marcus, keep talking to me, keep talking to her, tell her a story, tell her about something happy, and you hear his voice crack as he starts telling his little girl about the time they went to the beach, and she built a sandcastle, and the waves knocked it down, and she laughed so hard she cried. And you close your eyes for just a second, and you're there with them on that beach, and for a moment, the smoke doesn't exist, but then the line goes dead. You call back nothing. You call back again nothing. You type notes into the system with shaking fingers, and before you can even finish, another call is already waiting, and you answer, and it's an elderly woman. She's alone. She says she can't find her husband. She says they got separated in the crowd, and she doesn't know where to go. She says people are stepping over each other, and she fell, and someone helped her up. But now she's leaning against a wall, and she doesn't know if she can keep walking, and you tell her to stay where she is. You tell her to look for a landmark, anything that can help you send someone to her. And she says, there's a blue door and a broken street light, and you type it in, and you pray, that's an app. Hear the chaos around her, the shouting, the crying, the sound of glass breaking, and then she says, young lady, am I going to die? And the question hits you like nothing ever has, because in training they teach you how to give instructions, how to stay calm, how to prioritize, but they don't teach you how to answer that. They don't teach you what to say when someone puts their life in your hands and asks you to tell them it's not the end. You take a breath, and you say, ma'am, I need you to stay on the phone with me. I need you to keep talking to me, and I need you to know that there are people coming to find you, and you are not alone, and you don't know if you believe your own words, but you say them anyway, because she needs to hear them. Another call, another voice, another story, another person clinging to the hope that you can save them, and you're just one person sitting in a chair with a headset and a screen and a million blinking lights, and you haven't eaten in hours, and your throat is dry and your eyes burn, but you don't stop, because you can't stop, because every time you answer that phone, someone is counting on you. A teenager calls, and he's trapped under something he can't move. He says he can see the sky, but he can't feel his legs, and he's scared and he's cold, and he asks if he's going to be okay, and you tell him yes. You tell him to hold on, you tell him his name is important and you need him to stay awake, and he starts telling you about his mom, about how she's going to be so mad when she finds out he skipped class today, and you almost laugh because it's such a normal thing, such a human thing, and you realize that in the middle of all this chaos there are still pieces of normal life floating around like debris pass, or maybe it's only minutes, you can't tell anymore. The calls keep coming, some you can help, some you can't, some end with rescue, some end with silence, and every silence stays with you buried somewhere deep where you'll carry it forever. At some point the calls slow down, at some point the screens stop lighting up quite so fast, at some point you take off your headset and you look around and you see your coworkers. Some are crying, some are staring at nothing, some are still on the phone, their voices soft and steady, trying to guide someone home. You walk outside, and the sun is rising, and the city looks different now. There's ash in the air, and the streets are filled with emergency vehicles and people wandering around, looking lost, and you stand there for a moment, and you think about Marcus and his little girl. You think about the elderly woman by the blue door. You think about the teenager who couldn't feel his legs, and you wonder if they made it. You wonder if your voice made a difference. You wonder if you did enough, and then your phone rings. It's not the 911 line. It's your personal phone, and you look at the screen, and it's your mom, and you answer, and she says, "I saw the news. I just needed to hear your voice." And you try to speak, but the words get stuck, and you realize you haven't cried yet, not once through all of it. And now, standing on the sidewalk with ash falling like snow, you finally let yourself feel, and the tears come, and you don't try to stop them because you're human, and you answered the call, and you showed up, and you stayed, and that's all anyone could ever ask.